Dear colleagues, let us talk about ESG principles of business for sustainable development. Let me continue introducing my colleague Tetiana TKACHENKO, Doctor Habilitatus, Professor, Head of the Department of Environmental Protection Technologies and Labor Safety in Kyiv National University of Construction and Architecture. Among the others, she is an ambassador of ESG transition of businesses in Ukraine. She performs special lectures for the staffs of businesses in Ukraine. ESG principles arose as a response to environmental degradation, global warming, and growing economic inequality between rich and poor countries, which created additional ground for the emergence and development of new financial instruments and criteria. ESG principles are a business strategy that involves a careful attitude toward nature, employers, and society. They were developed in 2005 by former Secretary General of United Nations Kofi Annan. The essence of the approach is to restructure the company's work in such a way as not to harm the living and non-living environment. The ideology of the concept is reflected in the name. The abbreviation stands for E, environmental, S, social, G, governance. E, environment. The principle means a responsible behavior related to nature. A company complies with the environment concept if it follows trends in environmental issues, seeks to reduce damage to the environment, and use resources economically. Social management. The principle means social responsibility to staff, business partners, and customers. To meet the social criterion, it's necessary to create comfortable working conditions, provide social support to employees, and combat gender stereotypes. One of the indicators of social responsibility is ensuring uninterrupted work in any conditions. Governance. Corporate management. The principle means high-quality company management, evaluation criteria, transparency of reporting, measures to reduce the risk of corruptions, salary levels, relations with shareholders. There is a website which publishes a rating of companies that comply with ESG principles. ESG and Sustainable Development Goals. The concept of sustainable development is more general and concerns the development of human society as a whole. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals are so broad that they touch on all major aspects of the development of human society, not just business. Although it can be said that business is the main driving force behind the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Component G is not explicitly stated in the 17th SDGs, which is logical because the SDGs are more than business. ESG mainly concerns businesses and assessing its investments attractiveness. ESG is the corporate framework concept. It's most often used by a company to communicate with investors and by investors to evaluate companies. The G component in ESG stands for corporate governance and implies that corporate governance should be of the high quality and ethical. Net zero emissions is a part of component E. Net zero reflects to the amount of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, or sulfur dioxide that are removed from the atmosphere and equal to those emitted by human activities. Emission reduction will typically follow a specific trajectory such as 1.5 degrees. Achieving net zero means going beyond simply eliminating carbon dioxide emissions. Net zero refers to all greenhouse gases emitted into the atmosphere. Carbon sinks, such as forests and oceans, absorb and store more carbon from the atmosphere than they emit. Investment in their health are called carbon offset and allow companies to operate with a clear conscience, knowing that their emissions are balanced. Many companies start this process by reducing their CO2 emissions as much as possible before investing in significant carbon offset programs. Carbon sequestration or carbon absorption is the capture, removal, and permanent storage of CO2 from the Earth's atmosphere. It's recognized as a key way. This is important because about 45% of the CO2 emitted by humans remain in the atmosphere, a significant contributor to global warming. Carbon sequestration can prevent further emissions that contribute to global warming. Biological carbon sequestration occurs when CO2 is stored in the natural environment. This includes carbon sinks such as forests, grasslands, soil, oceans, and other water bodies. This is also known as indirect or passive sequestration. Forests and semi-desert forests are considered one of the best forms of natural carbon sequestration. CO2 is bound by plants during photosynthesis, exchanging it for oxygen as a cleaning agent. On average, forests store twice as much carbon as they emit, while an estimated 25% of global CO2 emissions are absorbed by forests and other vegetative forms such as grassland or pastures, fields, prairies, shrubs, etc. Therefore, protecting such natural environments is crucial to ensure that carbon sinks effectively capture CO2. Deforestation by construction or intensive agriculture poses the greatest threat to this natural process. In the absence of green spaces, an effective compensatory measure is green structures, a combination of living plants with building structures, which will be discussed in a separate lecture. Through wetlands and peatlands, CO2 can be trapped and stored in the form of carbonates. These carbonates build up over thousands of years as the CO2 mixes with other mineral elements such as calcium or magnesium. Eventually, the CO2 is released from the ground, in some cases after more than 70,000 years. Wetlands are the most efficient carbon sinks on the planet. Peatlands store twice as much carbon as all the world's forests combined. Therefore, conserving wetlands is one of the strategic areas of component E. The Wildfowl and Wetland Trust, WWT steered marshes, salt marshes store 10,000 tons of carbon annually. Aquatic environments and large water bodies are also excellent sinks of CO2. They absorb about 25% of the CO2 emissions from the Earth's atmosphere. This carbon is mostly found in the upper layers of the oceans. However, too much can oxidize the water, threatening the biodiversity that exists beneath it, which is another reason for the decarbonization of our atmosphere. Geological carbon sequestrations occur when CO2 is stored in places such as underground geological formation or rocks. This process is largely artificial or direct and is an effective way to offset emissions resulting from human activities such as manufacturing or construction. As a result, it's also largely technological. Recent innovations show that CO2 can be captured more effectively on a large scale. Carbon capture and storage, CCS, involves capturing CO2 produced by electricity generation or industrial activities such as cement or steel production. This CO2 is then compressed and transported to deep underground storage facilities where it's injected into rock for permanent storage. The CCS process consists of three stages. Capturing CO2, this is separated from other exhaust gases in industrial processes, for example in coal and gas-fired power plants, steel mills or cement plants. Transporting compressed CO2 by pipelines, road transport or ships to the storage site. Disposal by injection into rocks deep underground. As carbon credits reported, American oil giants Occidental Petroleum and Carbon Engineering will build the world's largest direct carbon capture plant in the Permian Basin of the United States. Carbon engineering, which has been captured CO2 from the air since 2015, announces the deployment of megaton-scale CCS technology. According to Oxy's CEO Vicky Holub, their plants will capture up to 500,000 tons of CO2 each year. After completion, the facility will remove about 36,000 tons of CO2 from the air per year. This corresponds to only 0.0001% of the 36 billion tons of CO2 that humans emitted each year. The company said that creating the world's largest carbon capture plant is one way to become part of the energy transition. That's because using CO2 generated by human activities is a way for the company to continue to gradually extract oil. The direct air capture plant will rely on carbon capture technology to absorb emission directly from industrial sources or from air that will be pumped underground. According to the industry body Global CCS Institute, CCS is a proven technology that has been operated safely for over 45 years. CCS has been in operation in the US since 1972, where several natural gas plants in Texas have captured and stored more than 200 million tons of CO2 underground. All of the components of CCS are proven technologies that have been used commercially for decades. According to the Global CCS Institute 2022 report, there were 194 large-scale CCS facilities worldwide, up from 51 in 2019, of which 61 were new CCS facilities added to the project portfolio in 2022. 30 of these projects are in operation, 11 are under construction, and the rest are in various stages of development. Of the total projects, 94 were in the Americas, 73 in Europe, 21 in the Asia-Pacific region, and 6 in Middle East. The CO2 capture capacity of all CCS facilities under construction has increased to 244 million tons per year in 2022, an impressive 44% year-on-year increase. CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage, means reusing it in the industrial processes, for example, to turn it into plastic, concrete, biofuels or graphene, which is widely used in technical devices that we use every day, such as smartphones or computer processors, and the technology of graphene environmental-friendly high-capacity batteries is under development. Engineering molecules are a fairly new science. Scientists can change the shape of molecules to form new compounds, capturing CO2 from the air. Let us conclude. Human impact on the environment today is intensively occurring at the local level, which leads to irreversible global consequences. Humanity has already reached the point of no return. Therefore, the main task is to contain the anthropogenic industrial negative impact at an acceptable level. Responsibility for the existence and survival of future generation in this task of ESG principles for business management. They are not identical to sustainable development goals. However, they are the main method to achieving these goals while doing business. Thank you for your attention.